I would say to someone who's like, I'm looking for like a tragedy so I can turn my life around. I wouldn't say it's important. It's more important the reflection that you do of yourself and in your situation in life. And those are the things that are going to help you identify really what you need to change, because change is really hard. So you have to identify those. It does not have to be a drastically devastating event to help you identify what needs to be different.
Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm excited to have Bob DePasquale on to talk to us about how to use your talent for others. Just speaking with Bob, I really got a sense of his infectious enthusiasm for making a difference in other people's lives and how that can translate into results in your business. Bob is a purpose-driven impact maker. He believes that everyone has the ability to make a positive impact in the world. When he was 18, he moved to New York for college, and while in football training camp, just 5 days before September 11th, 2001, he is diagnosed with cancer. In a very short period of time, his young, healthy life was turned upside down. He was forced to shift his focus to treating an extremely aggressive form of a terrible disease and coping with the effects of the recent terrorist attacks. Miraculously, he was physically healed in just 4 months, but mentally it took years. It wasn't until Bob identified his purpose that he realized the value of his battle with cancer and his family's losses on 9/11. Bob's mission is to make the world a better place by encouraging people to find the blessings in tragedy and use their gifts to help others. Thanks so much for joining me today, Bob.
Wade, I am excited to have you. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. So, one of the things that I really just enjoyed in speaking with you is the level of enthusiasm you have for what you're doing and that it's still there. I know a lot of people, when I talk to them, they'll kind of sell something or they'll say they have something. And you talk to them like, okay, wait, hold on. I got to get my game face on and I'm going to get ready. When's the camera rolling? As opposed to just talking with you and that this is legit. So first thing, when you and I talked in the pre-interview, there was a lot of things that came up and I want to get to a lot of them. But the first thing that really stuck out for me was something that you mentioned to me and I thought was just such an important thing because I think it's the core of what so many entrepreneurs and impact makers deal with, this struggle of how can I change the world if I'm not famous? How would you respond to somebody who asks you that question?
Usually respond by telling them a little bit about my story because I felt that way. I definitely felt that way at certain points in my life. And I still have that thought occasionally about how big I need to be in order to make a difference. But the difference you make isn't about you or how big you are or how famous you are. It's about how much you care and the little things that you do. And I heard someone tell me once, you may not be able to change the whole world, but you can change the world for one person. And that was super powerful to me. And it might be something as simple as opening a door for someone someday who's having a bad day. Or it could be something like helping a friend out in need when they're sick. I know there's been a lot of people sick during the pandemic here. It's been really tough. We offered to take food over to a friend's house once because they just couldn't go out, and that they thanked us like it was a life-changing event. And so those little reminders are good for the people that you do them for, but also for you. They really make you feel fulfilled for just helping people out in just simple situations. So if you think you need to be famous, it's not actually the case.
Yeah, I've heard a couple takes on this. Number one is that who you are before fame or wealth or a marriage or kids or any event usually is going to be pretty similar to who you are after. I mean, obviously there'll be changes and maybe kids do a little more change than other things. But for the most part, if you were generous before, you're going to be generous after. And also this idea of little things making a difference. I remember when I was in my 20s and I had that sort of romantic, dramatic vision of, well, I'm going to go to another country to help people because, I've got to go across the country. I was going to go to India and help people because I'd seen the videos of, the poverty there and whatnot. And of
Sure.
course, there's poverty emotionally and financially and spiritually in all parts of the world. But it was this idea of, okay, I have to go somewhere. And it was something that helped me avoid taking action. And it was almost a bit of an excuse sometimes too, like, okay, I'll get to that later. I'll get to that. I'll make a difference tomorrow. When I'm a millionaire, then I'll give a bunch of money. When I'm this, as opposed to, well, today I've got $100, I can give $1 or $10 or whatever it is. Today I can make somebody's world different. And that's the part I think that people miss out on. And you and I talked about this, uh, how serving others, specifically your customers, can help you get a greater control of your business and your life. How have you found that plays out for you?
I think what it does is, well, first of all, it provides good service and value for your customers as a business person. I mean, that's number one in business. If you're in business, you have to make sure that what you're doing has an intentionality around the customer because they're coming to you for a service or a product, whatever it might be. But in addition to that, looking beyond that a little bit, I think most business owners understand that their customers are important. But looking beyond that a little bit, it's also the process that you have in your life. Because if you are doing things to help other people, and that's of primary importance, for me, it helps you understand that there's human interaction there more. If you're more transactional, then the human mind is habitual. Those synapses fire the same way. It's much easier. There's studies on this. It's much easier for the brain to do what it knows than it is to chart new waters. And so if you do things that are consistently supporting other people, it helps you understand how important that is. And it's easier to do that. And it also makes you more efficient at what you do. If you're a business person and you feel overworked, you're spending too much time at the office, if you take a step back and you concentrate a little bit more on the small things that are help people be happier and more fulfilled and enjoy your product or your service more, I find that those people who do that, they take specific time during the day or during the week to identify those things and concentrate on them, they actually work more efficiently, or some might even say they work less because they don't have to spend as much time on the grind type of things that all business people have. I mean, not every minute of the day in business is going to be a dream and exciting. There's paperwork, there's complaints, there's digital marketing things that get messed up these days, right? I've learned that a lot in the past 12 months, but that's an interesting question because the best business people and entrepreneurial type of people, they have a passion about something. So can you connect that passion about whatever product or service it is to the relationship that you have with your customers?
Awesome. So, one of the things that happens, I know I've fallen into this category at times, is whenever I would think about, before I started writing books, I would think about, but wait, I don't have a dramatic story. And a lot of people have not had cancer, and we're not looking to all get cancer so we can have some moment of enlightenment. We want to say, okay, how can we have that without that? So for the person who says, yeah, but Bob, I haven't had something dramatic happen to me, I'm going to wait for that to happen. And when that happens, then I'm going to make this shift. And as if the tragedy itself or the challenge itself is what makes things happen. As somebody who has experienced a significant challenge, how would you respond to that person in a sense of two questions? Number one, do they really want the challenge, or do they want to just shift their mindset? And if they do want to just shift their mindset, perhaps without the challenge, how do you do that in a way, or how do you find when you talk with other people that haven't had something, how can people sort of wake themselves up without waiting for something dramatic to happen to them?
I wouldn't wish cancer or struggle or death or any type of illness on anyone. And that's important to understand. And so someone like myself, you mentioned in the introduction that I did go through cancer and experience 9/11 in person, and it was quite an ordeal. But it honestly was not specifically that event. It's not like that happened to me and bam, all of a sudden I had all this clarity and experience and wisdom. It doesn't work like that. And so to someone who thinks, well, I'm just going to wait for that really, really tough time, you don't want to do that, because once again, going back to the mind and how habitual it is, you definitely don't want to get into a habit looking and seeking out bad times. So that's number one. And then secondly, the things in your life that happen are lessons, and they can be lessons in different ways. And so for example, if you have an excellent time at an event or concert or a party or not an in-person party these days, but a social distancing web conference, you had an excellent time, you probably come out of that event feeling excitement and enjoyment because it was fun, and you probably would want to do it again at some point, to some degree. And so those things are pretty easy to say, okay, I really like that, but you might skip over any lessons that could have potentially been learned in that situation, because it's just exciting and it's easy to think about the happy and the good things. And so what I try to do is I went through that ordeal in my life. That was 18, 19 years ago. That was a long time ago now. And praise God, I'm healthy and good now. And so I'm not looking for another serious situation like that. So what I try to do instead is identify the things that have either been done well or could potentially be done better. And then in some cases, I've also identified things that other people have gone through that either are related to what I went through specifically, or in theory, the lessons about consistency and persistence and hard work and taking good care of oneself. So those are all reminders of things for me. So I would say to someone who's like, I'm looking for like a tragedy so I can turn my life around, I wouldn't say it's important. It's more important the reflection that you do of yourself and in your situation in life. And those are the things that are going to help you identify really what you need to change, because change is really hard. So you have to identify those. It does not have to be a drastically devastating event to help you identify what needs to be different.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, that's something, as a parent, I'm watching our children grow up,
Mhm.
and son is 14, daughter's 12. And I very much do believe in hoping that my children have challenges and struggle in a day-to-day sense of, oh, how do I grow? How do I learn? How do I achieve something? How do I go after something big? And one of the things that I've sometimes found challenging, and this is going to very much sound that it is, it's a first world problem. As somebody who's had a family that's provided well, there can be that almost sense of boredom or not needing to take on a challenge. So there's that sense of, okay, waiting for something to happen. And yet, what I find, you can approach it from a couple different angles. One is, well, for those who have a lot, much is expected, which can turn on a lot of shoulds and different things. So might not always be the best way to approach it. And the other is to say, well, look, I just have an opportunity. And yeah, if you're going to make the game of life, of business, of everything engaging, well, go for something big, or try to make a big impact. And it can look different. It doesn't have to be large numbers of people. It could be, like you said, significant impact in a smaller group of people. I certainly find when I coach my kids' sports teams, 8 to 10 kids on the team, and that repetitive, 6, 8 week season or whatever it is, and getting to work with these kids, that in and of itself is big. If you're a teacher, so there's so many different ways to do this. And I would say, like any kid that plays a video game, if you win, or any game, if you win the game too easily, it's boring. And if you always lose the game, it's not fun, because then you're just getting your butt kicked. And as humans, we always seem to be looking for that in between. Like, if you're a kid, you imagine the basketball game where it's a tight game and you hit the last minute shot as the buzzer goes off. And that's, I think, the kind of experience we want. And so, without having to hope for or wish for, because again, the mind does some interesting stuff, careful what you wish
Yeah.
for, something that you don't want, instead saying, okay, what can that next challenge be? And throwing in one other piece here, but I'd love your perspective on this, because you and I talked a little bit about traveling the world and changing your view of the world. As somebody whose parents are from the islands, Trinidad and Tobago, my wife is from Peru. I've had the blessing to travel different places. I've been to India. I've seen different forms of abundance and poverty, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all these different ways. And one of the things that's it's done for me is to realize, okay, if I know that 6 out of 7 people on the planet are living on less than $32 a day, and if I believe that me making $1,000 more this month is going to make me happy, that might not be the case. Now, I might still want to make $1,000. Let's be clear, for other reasons, and I want to buy stuff,
Sure.
but to think that that's going to be the variable, that's the part to me that says, okay, what are you looking to get out of it? So when it comes out of it, you're not as surprised. Maybe share a little bit, if you would, on that concept, and again, what travel has done for you as far as broadening your perspective.
Absolutely. I want to take one quick step back to highlight, though, what you said about challenging, and that's really important. So for people that are looking for growth, and not in a tragic type, experiential type of way, challenge yourself. Look at those things that maybe are going well, but how could they go a little bit better, especially in business? Challenge your business as well, and that's how business grows. And so from the perspective of travel and understanding the world and how it works, I grew up in South Florida. I was actually born in New York, grew up in South Florida, lived down here most of my life, except for college in that first 3 years. And it's a very, very diverse community down here. And I knew that, or at least I was told that or understood that. And I thought that was pretty normal. And so my travel experiences have actually been unique from a perspective of being in the middle, kind of. So what I mean by that is some of my travels have actually taken me to places, other places in the US or even in the world that aren't diverse at all. And so everyone does the same thing in the same culture in the same way. And that's kind of unique in one fashion because I'm used to it kind of being a very open. When I was being raised, it was kind of like, all right, let's just do what we want to do. We don't really have traditions in my family. And then on the flip side, we've gone to places that that are even more diverse or totally put us out of our comfort zone in a good way. And that kind of ties in with the whole challenging thing too. It's really unique to travel other places in the world and understand how people live. And so and then to connect the dots with your comment about helping people and people in need and poverty in the world, what for me, what it does, it used to make me feel really sad. It used to make me feel, man, these people have such a tough life. How can they survive? To be honest with you, in some cases they don't, which is terrible. And my thought was, I'm really sad because I don't know how to help these people. I'm not a billionaire, not a millionaire. I don't have enough money to just be throwing around and fix the whole problem. I can sponsor a child or two and do some part there, but what else can I do? And so for me, I used to be sad, but then I realized that the joy that people get from other people understanding their situation, regardless of what exactly you do, whether you give money, I've been overseas and built homes in other countries. I've traveled to other places just on strict vacation and experienced things that I would never expect to see. And even more than just giving money or specific things, or even doing service work for people, the relationship aspect of just sitting and talking, whether you need a translator or not, in some cases you do, just sitting and understanding people's where they come from and what means the most to them is one of the most powerful things in the world. And traveling, my wife and I, and some of our extended family, but mostly my wife and I travel together. We've experienced that in spades, and we've applied that to the other places that we go. I've noticed when I go to another country, they don't necessarily. I mean, they think it's funny and they think it's cute. Like if I try to dress like they do, or I try to speak words in their language, which is good, and I'm sure they appreciate that, trying to be in part of their culture. But actually, just asking about what's really important to them. My wife and I are in a country in Mexico, and the Spanish is the native tongue there, and I speak a little bit of Spanish, having grown up down here. But where we were, they speak a dialect of indigenous people called Tzatzil, and they don't even know Spanish. So we barely know Spanish; they don't know Spanish. So we're translating from English to Tzotzil, and they do not have the word love in that language. It literally does not exist. So you can't say I love you, and you can't say I really love this. You can't say there's no way to say the word love at all. Not like completely opposite of Greek, which there's like three. There's multiple words for love in different forms. So the way that those indigenous people there in Mexico, the way they express love is through action. And when we understood that, like I didn't understand that right away. And someone had to explain to me, well, they don't have the word love. So in my mind, it was, well, that's sad. No one can ever love each other if you can't tell them you love them. But when I actually talked to them, the young lady sat me down. She's like 16, 17, right? So I'm almost twice her age at the point. And she sits me down, and we needed a translator, but she ultimately said, Bob, love is not a word, it's an action. And I was like my head exploded. And so you learn stuff like that from being experiencing other cultures.
That's awesome. I think one of the things we forget is how important our time investments are with people.
Mhm.
And if I phrase it in a specific context, people will get it. So if I say, Wade, you're a father. If you don't invest time with your kids, they'll miss out on their father. Most people get that concept. Or, Bob, if you're in a relationship with your wife and you don't spend time with her, it's not going to help the relationship. Most people get that. And it almost feels like, okay, yeah, well, those people, because they're so close to us and because kind of like a TV show, we're a main character on the show, that matters.
Mhm.
And that in some way diminishes if it's a person we don't know, when very often, sometimes the people will take the most, um, will most listen to the words that come out of their mouth are people we don't know, because we know that they have no agenda. They're just telling us, hey, this is
Yep.
what's going on, or you look sad, or they're just talking to us. And to your point, as having been and traveled to and lived in different countries, and sometimes understanding and sometimes not, just connecting with people, being with people, hearing them. In fact, there's an entire part of psychology. There's a psychologist in the 70s named Carl Rogers, and he had a theory that was called client centered counseling. And because he liked the word client instead of patient, because his understanding was that other than for extreme psychological illnesses, that most people were lacking somebody to listen to them. They were lacking empathy, and they were lacking what he called unconditional positive regard, which was kind of like unconditional love, but you're not supposed to love all your clients. So again, kind of like back to the whole Greek thing of different versions of love.
Mhm.
But long story short, was his premise was most people can figure out their stuff, but they need to be heard, and they need somebody that sometimes will feed back to them. Oh, and not just the people make joke about, oh, so I hear you're saying this, blah, 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 that'll be $10,000. But the person that actually really listens to them and processes, and that process is something that any human being can do. It's not about your education level. It's not about how much money you have. And I think that's so critical what you said there, of just the gifts we give of our time and our attention, our present moment attention with somebody. That, gosh, you see it with little kids. If you ask, they want to tell you about their little widget or their thing that they just built or that they just drew, and they're not going to remember that in 10 years, but they'll remember that you listened to them, and that you
Yeah,
were present for them.
absolutely. I love what you said that. My nieces and nephews, they they're very, very intelligent young people, and they probably won't remember all the things that they're doing in creations, but just to sit down with them for a couple of minutes, and they happen to live in China, so that's a whole nother travel story there. But we hop on a Zoom meeting like this with them and just listen to them talk about what they did with their friends that day or how they play with their dolls or something is so important to their growth and nurturing. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, and you and I talked about something, and maybe just expand on this, and it relates to this, about impact being exponentially contagious.
I love that. That's like my saying. Impact can be exponentially contagious because, once again, because of the brain and the motivation. And if we talk about psychology here and unconditional positive self regard and synapses firing and dopamine, all of those things in the brain. I'm certainly not a psychologist, but I have learned and understood in my life that the things that I do that bring joy are easier to do again and repeat and repeat. And the more people that jump on the bus, if you will, and that's really my goal, it's all about positive impacts, right? So it's exponential because when you do something nice for someone else, they're likely to do something nice for the next person. And it's not necessarily meant to be reciprocal. They might do something nice back for me, absolutely. But it's more about the other people that they're going to bless as well. And so speaking of building houses in other places, an organization called Habitat for Humanity, if you're familiar, that's what they do. And part of the process of being involved or being a benefactor of one of the homes is that you have to, and it's not even so much have to, it's that you get to participate in building your own home, but then also helping the people after you. And the expense, any of the small expense that you might have in building your own home, because it's not, they used to just give away free homes, and they realized that there's a process of getting people involved in a community sense here. So there is a small expense, and depending on which country or which location in the US you are, it's different. But that expense of yours is part of it is actually going to assist funding the people after you. So from a financial and actionable perspective, you have to support the next person, and you really honestly, it feels good because you know that you benefited from it, and you move on. So exponential contagious impact is extremely powerful because it makes you feel good, and then it shows the next person how important it is to do the same.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that people forget or we forget is there are so many different ways to impact people. Like, so that's, I think you get these little buzzwords that, have little 10-year or 20-year windows, and impact is one of those right now. And I think a lot of people think, well, impact means, I changed their life, I saved them from cancer, I did some huge dramatic thing. And to me, there's so many different ways you can make a positive impact on somebody's life. Um, and as somebody who's an author and a coach and a podcaster, sometimes I'll get obsessed with, okay, well, how many people listened? We'll get these numbers in our head, or how much money did I give? And I think the thing to remember is, again, there's so many things going on. The same way I can't see Wi-Fi waves or radio waves right now, there's other things going on, other forces at play that we don't fully understand. And money's not the only way to impact it. It can be a beautiful way to impact and help people. Giving time, there's so many ways to do that. And I think that makes it easier, perhaps, for people to consider how they can make an impact without it feeling like this big deal. How can someone get started with an impact project if they want to, in some way, not so much formalize something? It doesn't have to be blessed by a government body or whatever, but how can somebody become more intentional about this and make this happen more in their life?
Love this question because I ask it of myself all the time, and it's a journey and it's a process. If you want to start, the good news is you want to start. So you got the idea. That's actually half the battle, is the desire. And no matter what walk of life you're in, the desire is extremely important. Like, I know some very, very intelligent people who can put together some tremendous processes, but it's not in their psyche to desire to carry them out. So first, congratulate yourself that you want to make a difference and you're engaged in a conversation like we're having today. And the second thing is, you have to identify what it is that you really, really care about. And I don't mean what makes you happy. I don't mean that party that we were talking about earlier that you went to, or watching TV. There's a difference between joy and being happy, or enjoying something, or feeling super passionate about it. So identify the things that really, really make you feel more than happy. They make you feel joy, whatever it could be, and start and don't, if you need to pull out a piece of paper or your smartphone and just brain dump, if you will, a bunch of things that would make you feel really good. There's an issue, like we were talking about, poverty or homes, or maybe there's just people shut-ins, elderly, kids, abandoned, trafficking, anything like that you feel that really would make you feel good to be involved in some way. And I guarantee you, there is someone out there who's doing something related to that project. You're not the only one. Philanthropy and generosity are not lonely. Believe me, they are not solo efforts. So you will be able to find information about what it is, those few things. Then you got to pare them down. I mean, you can't be everything to everyone. So the first thing is have the desire. The second thing is figure out what you really, really care about. And then just do your research. It's so easy to get information these days. And like you said, Wade, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to start a new 501c3 and file your, tax report with, it doesn't have to be that. It can be, oh, wow, I checked it out. I went online and there's already a website that points out places that you can go to provide assistance for people with whatever it is that problem is that you have. And then what I would do, the third step is take action. Taking action is so important. So just to recap real fast, have the desire. 2, identify what it is that you really, really care about. And then 3, take some sort of action. And then I guarantee you, if you take even the smallest action, which reading the website or participating in something or whatever it might be, once you take that action, then you're going to know what actually needs to be done to fix that problem. And that's where people start, that's where your creative brain really starts to take over. And then and the contagious aspect of making a positive impact. Because let me ask you a question. What do you do when you do something fun these days, or you do something exciting, or you do something with your kids? You probably post a picture of it online, or call your friend, or tell someone about whatever it might be. So once you do that really cool thing that made you feel joy, I'm pretty sure you're going to share it. And then that's where the exponential factor comes in, because all of those people are going to see that. And they're like, man, Bob's doing this great thing with these people. I'm going to ask him and maybe I can help. He's having lots of fun doing that. I want to participate.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned Habitat for Humanity. I've done that so many times, also grown up in the Southeast Florida area, and such an awesome organization. And you said something that was bubbling to the top of my brain, and you already said it. To
Mhm.
be really clear, you don't have to start a nonprofit. In fact, sometimes that's one of the least efficient or least effective things you can do, because it might take you another year or two to get ready till you actually can help people. And if there's an organization that's already doing that, you jumping right in and helping, whether it's financially or time wise or whatever it might be. And so, to be really clear, when we talk about getting started with an impact project, it doesn't mean you have to be the one that founded it or initiated it. And I remember a friend of mine had talked about this. He said so many nonprofits uh, find themselves to end up competing for resources, and you say, wait, hold up, what's the main goal here? And of course, it's not intentional, but sometimes people get so caught up on their vision of what it needs to look like, instead of saying, look, we got people in the world who don't have food, for example, or who don't have water. And it's great that there's so many organizations that do this. And from what I understand, these days, most of them collaborate, which is great, instead of, well, I'm going to get mine bigger than yours. And I think there's so much we can do. Like you said, definitely the researching, gosh, especially, and then so much of this ties into entrepreneurialism as well. When you're an entrepreneur, it's great to say it. It feels great. It's like, I just started something. But wait, did you even do any research? You might better serve the marketplace yourself by
Mhm.
figuring out how you can make the biggest impact. And again, not that you have to measure yourself off of that, but ultimately, I mean, I'd like to impact. If you told me, Wade, would you rather impact less people or more people? I'd rather impact more people. That's a pretty
Sure.
simple one for me. And so sometimes that takes a little bit of looking into it. And I think this is where sometimes it gets tough for us to look at this conversation of, okay, well, how much should I give or shouldn't give? And there's all these different things that go on in our head. And am I being selfish? Am I being selfless? Am I being altruistic? Am I just doing it for ego reasons? And I think it can just kind of do this whole loop in your head. How do you just take it back to the simplicity of, okay, this is the project I want to do. And perhaps this is why maybe at times it can be easier to be selfless rather than selfish.
I'm all about being organized, whether it's in business or impact projects. And it, once again, doesn't have to be a huge project, but just being as organized as possible. And so once you've gained information, once you've gathered what you're doing or what you're really, really interested in, for me, the best thing is just lay steps out. I mean, I'm really glad you talked about this, because entrepreneurialism and impact are directly related. And the word impact by definition isn't technically a positive. It's not. It's agnostic to its direction, if you will, right? So you could have negative impact. Now, obviously, that's not what I'm about. But ultimately, the impact is something that you're going to make, or that you can make in business or in philanthropy, whatever it might be. And so being organized. So to compare them again, whatever it takes to make sure that you execute those things, writing things down, making a schedule. Maybe you work a full-time job, maybe you work a 40, 50-hour week, and you just don't have time to, like you said, create a nonprofit or something, but you can volunteer and help. So set yourself some goals. Okay, I'm going to go spend an hour every week researching places that I can help. And then I will commit to going once a month or once a week or whenever it is, to the specific, to dedicate to that cause, whether it's to the food bank or the Habitat for Humanity, whatever it might be. I'm going to go to those places and actually do. And then you can check them off. And it feels really good to look back and say, you know what, I set a goal of doing this once a week for a month, and I did it every week. And you're going to feel tremendously accomplished.
Awesome. So now to make sure, for sometimes we have people that say, well, wait, okay, it's 4-Day Work Week Entrepreneur Podcast. You're going to make sure you give me stuff that helps me work less and make more. And I happen to believe that impact, I mean, that's how you grow a business. And of course, as you just said, obviously positive impact, that's how you grow a business. That's how it becomes viral. That's how it becomes something that makes it easier. So first of all, for anybody who's thinking, first of all, when you make positive, amazing impact, that in and of itself becomes your marketing. You get your free marketing, you get your advertising, you get all that stuff, because that's what people are ultimately looking for. All the paid advertising is us trying to verbalize to people, hey, we're going to try to do this. But when somebody else says, Bob just impacted my life, that's it. There's your advertising, there's your marketing. Of course, we can get them to share it more. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about people, and whether it be business finances or personal finances, how does knowing your purpose, knowing the impact you're looking to make, how does that start directing, whether it be, well, two things, how the business that you run or what you're aiming for, and then ultimately just even how you manage your day-to-day finances?
Sure. It is imperative that you have a baseline plan or system financially, whether it's in business or personal. And I love this collision of impact and entrepreneurialism. The other thing that I talk about a lot, or that resonates with me, is fitness. And from a physical perspective, there's a certain baseline health that I think people can have, or consistently create, if you will, a lifestyle. And I liken it to finances because there's certain basic fitness tests in your financial life that you need to jump over, right? So a friend of mine was looking to get into the police force, and he had to train himself. He had to do X amount of push-ups and pull-ups, and he had to run a certain amount of time. He had to reach this baseline amount. Now, he ended up blowing some of them out of the water, and then some of them he was really close just because they were just naturally harder for him. And you'll find the same in finances, but there's some baseline things in your business, and if you actually do start a nonprofit, or in your personal life, that you're going to need to have. Obviously, you need to spend less than you make. You need to make sure that whatever's coming in, you're not spending over that. And that, some people jump over that, right? You got to be in the green. And then you need to determine where those dollars that you are spending are going. You need to isolate the things that are absolutely non-discretionary expenses. These are the things that I got to pay the rent, or I got to pay my bill, I got to pay my utilities, or if you're in businesses, I got to pay for the cost of service, I got to pay for my building, whatever it might be. Those are things non-discretionary. Okay. Then hopefully, once again, you're in the green and you have a balance of space there. Okay. Then now all of a sudden you have some discretionary budget. The beauty about the discretionary budget, especially if you're a solopreneur or you're a small business owner, is that you have control over that. You can do what you want with it. And I'm really glad you talked about the aspect of philanthropic and generosity type of events actually providing advertising for you. I used to be the type of person that was like, well, I'm going to go do this special thing, help someone out, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to make it part of my business. I don't want to be that guy. And I actually learned, this is pretty recent, in the past couple of months, that our society now has actually shifted its view of arrogance, if you will. Once again, not a psychologist, but my deduction, and I've spoken to some other people about this, I actually talked about it on our podcast, Speaking of Impact. And what I've learned is that if you're not sharing what the good things that you're doing, so whether it is philanthropic or even maybe the great services that you provide at your business, right? If you're not sharing those, you're actually coming from a position of, or sitting in a position of arrogance, because it's an assumption that, well, I'm so good, everyone already knows that I'm philanthropic, or everyone already knows that I provide great services. It's, the world is so public. I'm just so good that I don't need to advertise, or I don't need to tell anyone about it. And that's not actually the case. And people are getting bombarded with messages all the time. So they're not going to notice you, and you're not going to be able to show anyone. And actually, you're not going to be able to create the impact, the exponential impact that you want to make, if no one knows what you're doing. That removes the exponentiality, is that a word, from impact. So when you do these type of things with that extra budget that you have, you need to do them, and you need to tell people about it. You need to do something great with that extra space that you have. So get the baseline of your budget down. there's certain things in there. We don't have time to go into all the other things that you need to think about, expenses and insurance and protecting your whole plan as well. Risk management is extremely important, but you get the budget down, you take the surplus, and then whatever you do with it, you celebrate it. I mean, you tell people about it. Hey, we had an amazing time going out to the local food bank and serving for a couple hours on Saturday morning with the office, all of my staff members. That's what we do. That was our team building for the month. We decided not to do our team meeting on Friday afternoon, and we said we're going to go over to the food bank and then tell people about it.
Yeah, and something, it took me a while to make this shift. And for those people listening, I'll share my perspective. So I've been raised Catholic. There's a lot of great things about it. There's things that not so great about it, like anything. And
Mhm.
one of the things, though, when I mentioned the tradition, is because there's different verses and different ideas about not bragging and not trying to show to the world that you're giving. And one of the things that it really kind of became challenging for me was when we first started having a lot of, maybe about 2 months into when COVID had hit. And I saw a lot of my friends who were nurses, doctors, working long hours at the ER. And I just, on Facebook, sent to one of my friends who's a nurse, said, "What can I do to help?" She said, "Wade, if you all like brought in pizza, like the people would love it." And here I'd already thought about, okay, what can be, like, all the things, what can't be brought in at this. So, wait, I can bring in pizza. So I called the hospital, like, yeah, you can bring in pizza. So I did it.
Cool.
And when I shared it on Facebook, I shared it on LinkedIn. And I think, well, there was a few things. Number one, I was clear of my intention of why I was sharing it. I was not sharing it to say, "Hey, everybody, look at me, I'm an awesome guy." I know most of my friends can afford to buy pizza. So it was more of like, hey, if you're feeling, and this is what I said, if you're feeling like you don't know what you can do to help, and you're feeling like, man, I want to do something, this is something that, like you said, research that a nurse friend of mine said you could do. And here's how I did it. So it was more like a how to, or like you saying, hey, here's what I did with our team instead of our Friday meeting. And here's what we got out of it. So less of the focus is on me. Hey, look at how awesome I am. It was more like, hey, this might be something that helps you create greater impact. And kind of like what you said, because my assumption is you, as one of my friends or followers or listeners, also want to help people. Here's one way you can do that. And so I think that way of, so again, the focus was not on me of, well, I walked in and they said, "Wade, you're an awesome dude." It's like, no, here's what I did. Here's the thing that I didn't figure out that, yeah. So I called the person, and it became more of just an instructional of, here's one way. You're not a bad person if you don't. You're not a good person if you do. But here's one way if you want to, like you said, allowed it to have more of an exponential effect. And then a couple of my friends said, "Oh, wait, yeah, I did it this way, but we did this. So you might want to do that." It was like, so it became this very positive, virtuous, viral sort of thing that happened. And it wasn't about me. It wasn't about that I'm a great guy and you're not. And yet, like you said, it allowed me to share it, because otherwise, if we're all hiding this, and if the only thing on the news is all the crappy stuff going on, and the middle 80% of us that are just doing nice things for each other, helping each other out, and if that doesn't somehow get attention, well then, yeah, we're missing out, or at least the world's not seeing an accurate view of what's actually going on in the world.
Yeah, love it. I love that perspective too. It's teaching people and educating them how to do it. It's not, hey, look at me. It's, hey, this is how you do something that makes an impact. Yeah, that's great, Wade. I love it. I love it.
Awesome. So one of the things that I find when I talk with people, especially entrepreneurs, I know you have a podcast, you're looking to help reach more people, is trying to figure out, how do you communicate what you're doing. So this kind of ties to what we just talked about, in a way that is going to be effective. Where does consistency come in for you in this of making an impact? So you and I both know, as podcasters, consistency is such a huge thing. As entrepreneurs, consistency is a huge thing. People talk about habits. How would you comment on the difference between, let's say, that idea of, well, I'm going to do this huge, massive thing that maybe even never happens because it's so grandiose,
Mhm.
versus the day to day, and perhaps eventually building habits that might even grow? Um, how do you find it makes it easier, perhaps, to help people start with something that's consistent, and something that they can really commit to?
Sure. Well, let me first start with two books that you should read. One of them, I don't know if you're familiar with. It's called The 12 Week Year, and there's some things in there that are they're pretty complex, but I think the basic concept of it is you're simplifying and making your time frames shorter so that things are more urgent, but they're more understandable. And so consistency, it's easier to understand the little steps if you can measure them also in a small manner. It's very hard to do small things and measure them with big numbers. And number two is the other book I would recommend is Atomic Habits. Talking about habits. It's by an author by the name of James Clear. Great text, and it actually gives you actionable things to do to be more consistent. And those consistent steps are extremely important. Those little things that you do over and over and over again will get you to a point. Then you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, I did a lot. And those habits become easier. Once again, brain repetitiveness in the brain is good. It's easier for the brain to do it. So the more consistent you are, the easier it is, and it adds up rather than trying to pile it all in at once. I don't know if we have time for a full story, but I actually ran a marathon once, and my wife was training for one, or a half marathon, and I was dumb enough to pretty much run a marathon without training. And I'm glad I did it. It's like I said, long story how I was able to pull it off, and I was in so much pain. But I'll never do that again. And it doesn't not make sense to try to run a marathon without running 400 meters over and over again, if that makes any sense. And so you have to be consistent because the body is not capable, especially the brain is not capable of doing huge things over and over and over again. You have to do small things over and over and over again, and you'll get to the big. The big things will come, but you got to basically put it this way, you got to fill your glass with sand, right? You can't fill your glass with rocks because it'll never fill up. There'll be space and there'll be air in there. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people learn more about your work and your podcast?
they can go to bobdepasquale.com. Easiest place to find the podcast. It's called Speaking of Impact. The blog called E-Impact. And you can check out the newsletter there as well. And I have a book coming out later this year, but you'll find more information about that. And check me out at bdepa, at bdepa, BDEPA on Instagram and Twitter, LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll make sure to put all those links in there. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. I'm going to really be interested to hear the feedback we get from our listeners, because what I'm finding more and more, to your point, people are becoming more aware. They're becoming more multidimensional, more aware of all the different ways that we can grow and make an impact. And I think what you're doing is bringing tremendous light and enlightenment to that conversation. So thank you so much for coming on, Bob.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate it, man. Take care.
All right. And thank you all for listening. As always, I look forward to helping you make more money in less time and make more impact doing what you do best so you can better enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks for listening.